Hey everyone, my name is Logan and this is Logan's Lens, and today we are going to be discussing Harriet the Spy. It may sound a little random, but the star of Harriet the Spy, Michelle Trachenberg, tragically passed away during a liver transplant, I believe, about like a week and a half ago by the time I'm recording this video. It was really shocking to find out that Michelle Trachenberg passed away because as I was really thinking about what I've seen her in, I realized that she was in quite a bit of 2000s movies. The two main ones that come to mind are, of course, Harriet the Spy and Ice Princess. My sister mentioned Gossip Girl, which I personally haven't seen. But she was also in 17 again, and if I recall, she was also in a few horror movies. Girl was getting work. But it all started with one Harriet the Spy, which surprisingly came out in 1996. A very early Nickelodeon movie. Usually when I think of early Nickelodeon movies, I think of like the Rugrats movies and of course Good Burger. Future Logan here, and I just found out that Harriet the Spy actually was the first Nickelodeon produced movie. Now, I'm actually born in 1997, but this is still considered a childhood movie of mine, as this was something my mom always borrowed from the library. This is definitely one of those movies that kind of helped shape me. Harriet's basically trying to be, she says a writer, but she kind of acts more like a journalist. She's essentially reporting on her classmates in this journal that she just references as her notebook. But it's essentially journalism. The movie says throughout that she's gonna be a writer, but it's journalism. Anyways, the way how she took notes on people, the way how she observed others, that kind of curiosity was something I always had as a kid. So eventually in 5th grade, when I got into Diary of a Wimpy Kid and that popularized journals and diaries, I myself got my own and began to write in it nearly daily for the next, how old am I? We'll just say 15 years for fun. I decided to rewatch the movie the other day because, of course, the actress is passing, and I was very surprised to find out how well this movie holds up, especially for a very early on Nickelodeon movie. Now, it is based off of a book, and I haven't read it, but I do believe the book plays a huge part in why the movie is really good for not only kids, but later on in life. It's really one of those coming-of-age movies. It just starts when you're in 6th grade. It's a really unique kids movie because there is no magic, and yet there is whimsy. There's a lot of wonder, but there's no fantasy. It's really a slice of life and a drama revolved around 6th graders. The main trio, Harriet, Sport, and Jamie, are the best. You really feel like that they're best friends. They most likely hung out like a few weeks or even a month before the shoot so that they can have this bond. Or maybe they were just really getting along on set immediately, because you can believe that these guys have been friends their whole lives. I just love the way they talk, the way they dress. They really act like a couple of outcasts in school, because I was one of those outcasts in school. I was getting bullied, not as bad as these kids, but we'll get to that. There are multiple scenes in this kids movie that reminded me of Mean Girls, which of course wouldn't come out for another 8 years. Interesting enough is that the plot doesn't kick in till the 35-minute mark. Throughout the first 30 minutes of the movie, you just follow Harriet as she goes about her day-to-day. You see the kids in her class, the notes she takes on them, even the notes she takes on her own friends. Most importantly, you see her relationship with her nanny, Gully. Okay, so slight tangent here. She is credited as Ol Golly. They all call her Gully?
Mom and Dad's night out. Me and Gully's night in. Well, she's Gully. If Gully said choose between being a spy and having friends, Gully was gonna teach me.
I'm not hearing things right. They're saying Gully. Every single character in this movie is saying Gully, not Golly. Anyway, this nanny is really cool. She's adventurous, she listens to Harriet, and she also supports what Harriet wants to do, something that we don't really see from anyone else in the movie. This includes Harriet's parents and also her classmates. Speaking of her parents, we do start to see little hints in the first 30 minutes that something isn't right between the parents' relationship with Harriet and Golly's relationship with Harriet. Golly seems to know everything about Harriet, and Harriet seems to be only enthused when it comes to Gully and her notebook. Harriet actually barely even looks at her parents, and her parents don't even know what she likes.
Not even cream cheese with olive? Yum, yum, yum. How about the fancy cucumber kind with the crust cut off?
I know that I like. tomato.
Another side tangent. It is 1996. This book came out in 1964, and somehow these parents live in this crazy home with greenery out front and a live-in nanny? Like, I can believe if this was still 1964, but the movie takes place in 1996, make it make sense. I can only imagine what that family's net worth is worth today. I'm on the wiki here, and it says in theaters the pilot episode of Hey Arnold called Arnold was shown before the film. This was in theaters? Usually when you hear Nickelodeon movie, it's gonna be televised, so I'm actually genuinely surprised that this was like in theaters. Anyway, the plot finally kicks in once Gully gets fired. She makes a really stupid mistake. She's quite literally on the job cooking dinner for Harriet, and she brings a date? Her parents are gone. At a party. I get you live here, but you just cannot bring a date over to someone else's house. It's just all sorts of wrong. She's literally working. The dinner date ends up going wrong because Gully ends up burning the food, so they go out for a night of fun and a movie, which again, the parents are out. They're gonna come back. You're on the job. And she gets fired, rightfully so. But oddly enough, the parents regret it instantly. But Gully actually does agree with them that it's time for her to move on. And this is when things really change. Without Gully, Harriet feels really lost, and she starts spying on people more than ever. But she also ends up having a bit of attitude because she's angry. She is at this age to start having a little bit of this attitude anyway, so I think it makes a lot of sense, but the driving force is of course Gully leaving. Since Gully isn't around, Harriet actually decides to go out and play with her friends for once instead of going straight home to spy. At first it's going really well. You see the kids playing tag, something I remember doing. A fun song is playing, and actually now that I think about it, fun songs are playing all throughout the film. You'll hear a lot of big band music playing all of a sudden, which may sound a little random, but considering that they're in the city, it's a bit fitting. It also adds to the adventure and whimsy of it all. But over at the park, Marianne, the school bully, ends up finding Harriet's notebook, and then things just go even more downhill from there. Marianne reads out everything. It's literally a scene out of Mean Girls. It's burn book time, baby. She's saying every little bit of dirt that Harriet wrote on all the others. Whether it's fact or not, they're mean and everyone laughed. Everyone also decided to come together and hate on Harriet, including her best friends. Because again, Harriet wrote some mean things about her friends. Even more so about her friend's sport. She took a dig at his dad? Like, why would she do that? It's just ignorant kid stuff. Which I like that they put in the movie. Kids do ignorant things. Now Harriet is completely alone, but oh my, are we not done just yet? Now before we get to our redemption arc, we're gonna go down through a spiral of bullying. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when it came to seeing fictional bullying on TV, I always thought it was a little bit ridiculous since that bullying was nowhere near what I experienced. It was just more fictionalized, really cartoony, less verbal. This is the case with Harriet the Spy, but it's less cartoony and more like psychological? First, the kids block off all of her spy routes, which I don't know how they would find her spy routes. Maybe you'd think it would be the notebook, but we haven't seen her draw a map of all the routes that she goes to. She just says the people that she goes to. What, did she write down their address? Whatever the case, they find and they block it. They create a Catch the Spy club. Then they start spreading a rumor that she smells, even ignoring her very existence. But the final straw comes when they pour paint over her in class. This was actually a little heartbreaking to see because this was like really mean. It's just a bunch of kids being mean to another small kid. Of course, Harriet shouldn't have written the things that she wrote, but the other people wouldn't have known about it if Marianne didn't steal the notebook and read it out loud, you know what I mean? But it's good to note that Harriet did not apologize by this time. So the paint gets spilled over her, and the class has the bright idea to clean the paint off of her. But of course the paint just spreads, and it's blue! Marianne decides to sneak in more paint. She literally pours it on top of her head. This was such a common theme in kids' movies throughout like the late 90s and 2000s. Mess. Let's throw this kid in chocolate. Let's do food fights. Let's throw a pie in this person's face. It was never really funny, but that's such a weird common theme in kids' movies. But anyway, this was the last straw for Harriet, and she actually gets up and smacks smacks Marion across the face. It is a perfect smack, by the way. You see the paint across her face, and it kind of looked like it was done like on purpose. Well, the smack was done on purpose, but I meant the print. Also, Marion's response to the smack was actually really funny.
Well, that wasn't very dignified.
So now we go to Harriet's rebel girl arc. Harriet decides to get back at every single person she wrote about. She hangs up the girl with the big boobs' bra, even though she was probably one of the nicer ones. She cuts off her classmate's braid. This girl didn't even say a word throughout the whole movie, but she still had to get her hair cut. The hair was so clearly fake, like once you see that braid, you're like, oh, that's clearly synthetic, but still evil. She ruins Janie's science project. She posts pictures, again, Mean Girl style, across the hall of her other best friend Sport in a dress. She's etching their names on the desk like a creepy Death Note blacklist. It is weird. You really think she would have gotten expelled for this? Maybe it's a good thing that this was made in 96. You know, a kid can get away with a few more extra stuff. But to top it all off, Harriet decides not to do anything physical to Marianne. I realize I've been calling her Marianne. Is it Marion? Like a Marinberry?
A few moments later.
It is. Oh well. I'm gonna put that along with how they all say Gully. It sounds like they're calling Marion Marianne. She doesn't put a single finger on Marianne. Instead, she goes to the girls' bathroom where her posse is and spills the tea. She walks up over into the bathroom, washing her hands and just saying how everything Marianne has been reporting in their little school newspaper, because I forgot to mention that they have a little school newspaper, is a lie. Because Marianne isn't this rich little girl who has loving parents. No, she's still rich, but her dad is in Amsterdam. So according to Harriet, her dad doesn't love her. This was the biggest burn I have ever heard come out of a little 6th grader. Now, Harriet's parents have been getting a ton of phone calls from all the other students' parents. Again, they should have called once they saw the names etched in her desk, but whatever. The parents actually take Harriet to go see a psychiatrist. This was really surprising to see. They never say psychiatrist, they never say therapist, they never say session. No, you see them take Harriet to go see a guy, and they have 2 scenes together. One where he's just staring at her, wondering what they want to do, and the second is when they're playing a little game. But that was enough to get the point across. Harriet was able to talk once she had a little game to keep her occupied, and shortly after, the therapist/psychiatrist, they don't say, remember? Gives her a little notebook to write, because that's how she's able to really express herself. This whole part of the movie is really, really good. It's this redemption arc that we're getting to, and the real heart of a coming-of-age movie. You have to have that downfall, but you also have to have that powerful growth. Harriet isn't diagnosed with anything. It was just supposed to be like a psychological evaluation, but shortly after this, her parents give her a little bit of a surprise. Golly! She's here to give a little bit more advice to Harriet in the best way possible. You really gotta appreciate this character because she just knows how to speak to kids. Harriet's over the moon to see her, but she does need her advice. So Gully tells her that she needs to apologize and say a little lie. She explains it like when you see a sick person and they're wearing an outfit, you don't want to say they look bad, you want to say they look good to make them happy. So even if Harriet doesn't feel sorry for what she wrote, she needs to do it. And I thought that was a very responsible way to not only handle the situation, but also to explain it to a kid. So then Harriet goes on a little apology spree, starting with her friends, but ending with her classmates as a group. She suggests that instead of Marianne just taking over each week on being editor of the little newspaper, that Harriet should do it instead, or at least have everyone be able to participate. The teacher agrees and puts it to a vote, and somehow, because of Harriet saying, hey, we should all have a turn to write in this paper, everyone suddenly forgives her? Yeah, remember when I said apology spree? I'm starting to realize that was actually just her best friend she apologized to. She didn't really apologize to her classmates. One kid who hasn't spoken a word this whole movie was this kid that they all referenced to as the guy in the purple socks. Harriet said she'd rather hang herself than be him. Ouch. He says that he agrees, and also that Harriet is a really good writer and they should all have her be the editor. Because this kid finally spoke up, all the kids agree with him and now want Harriet to be the editor, so she is. Harriet wins, Marion loses, all is well. And of course it ends with one last little big musical number with none other than James Brown. It's a really cute way to end the movie, not just because everyone's dancing, which we're pretty used to seeing, but also because we see Harriet is getting back into spying once more. She goes back on her usual routes, sees her favorite people, and continues to take down notes, but this time using a typewriter. Again, she's a journalist. This whole movie, they say she's gonna be a writer. That's not being a writer, that's journalism. You wanna argue a journalist is a type of writer? Sure, but what I'm seeing right in front of me is strictly journalism. We also see the parents getting more involved with Harriet, playing with her, and also having dinner with her. It's a really good movie, and I was really surprised to see how essentially timeless it was. Like, even though people aren't exactly talking about this movie today, it was still very realistic with how they portray childhood. Of course, these are city kids, so they have a bit more freedom than most other kids around the world. Like me, someone who grew up in the suburbs. I was not allowed to go out on my own until I was a teenager, but these guys are 11. It's also just really funny to hear how they talk, because obviously they still sound like kids today, but their slang is different. And it was just really funny to hear how they insulted each other back then. Rest in peace, Michelle Trachenberg. You gave us some lovely performances. Oh yeah, before I forget, there was a sequel that Disney Channel made in the early 2010s. It was called Harriet the Spy Blog Wars, and I remember it being awful.
A Disney Channel world premiere movie, Harriet the Spy, Vlog Wars, premieres now
On Disney Channel.
It had Jennifer Stone, aka Harper, playing Harriet the Spy this time. And because it's the early 2010s, they blog. I don't know about you, but I've always hated that word blog. Like, even when I hear it today, I'm just like, ew. Just say article. Like, please. I haven't seen it since it first came out on Disney Channel way back when, so if you guys want me to go check it out and talk about it, let me know. I wouldn't mind. It's been forever. I'm sure it'll be good cringe, or maybe it's bad. And I want to know, did you have a journal growing up? Whether it be one you write down, one you typed, maybe it was a video diary, I want to know. Like I said, I come from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid generation, so I'm sure there's quite a few of you out there that was also very impacted by this movie and those books. That's gonna do it for this video. Please leave a like and comment. We need some engagement in order for me to get back onto your feed. I'm Logan, and that was my lens. Later.